Hey, we are in for a treat today. We have Lissa Maris on to talk about her amazing adventures with her husband, Nate, how they pack, how they prep, what they put in their bags, how they put them in their bags. She is awesome. I read her book. This is in the Raw Vegan Bundle last night from beginning to end. It is the most magical book that I have ever read. It is so beautiful. They talk about how they met, their first encounter, their first trip, how Nate brought everything the first time, wanted to impress Lissa. It's so beautiful. Oh, hi.
Hello, hello. It's I was loving hearing you talk about the book, how much you loved it.
Oh my God. It is everything. It's not just Tales from the Tailgate. It's actually your love story with Nate. And it's also how we take care of ourselves. Like it is so beautiful. It's everything. Like everything you need in your life in that book. So it's really such an accomplishment. What a great gift that you put all that in there. It's really wonderful.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was a really awesome book to write. And we were only going to put a couple recipes in there, it was going to be more informational, but when I started like looking through all my photos, looking for recipes, I was like, I should include this and I should include this and we need this and all of a sudden it was like over 100 recipes and I'm like, okay.
It's a
So,
it's a masterpiece.
oh,
It really is. I was like almost crying, just like the first time you met and the first trip you took and how magical it was. Like I was feeling it. I was feeling the feels like, oh my God, of course that was magical. You were just, I think you were just trying to get to know each other after you met that first time at some festival or something. And then I guess you took that trip to Las Vegas. I'm not really sure the exact dates or anything, but I'm assuming that was one of your first big trips
mhm.
together.
Yeah, very, very first. And it was really cool because we were there for convention. So we were like sharing a hotel room together right off the bat. And it was really cool because we already had like months of kind of like we were ready
Mhm.
and we're just like, let's do it.
Ah,
So it was cool how Nate brought his
I
bag
know.
with his blender and his spices and the bowls and the forks. Like he had it all. He's like, don't worry about it. I got it all. I was like, you're impressive.
Oh, I love that he did that. It's like, watch me, trying to show you what he's made of. I love that. That's like certainly a way to impress your girl. Bring
Mhm.
all your bowls, bring the blender. I mean, so anyway, it's so I'm reading this like I don't even know how he came up with this contraption that he made. Holy moly. That
Isn't that
he's
cool? Did you watch the video?
yes. I was like, how did he think of this? How the
So
hell did he think of that?
yeah. So what happened? For everybody who doesn't know, who's watching, we have in the Ultimate Raw Vegan Bundle our travel ebook that we contributed, and you can get the bundle by going to the link in either of our bios. But in the travel book, we have Nate wrote up like this huge write up on how he built our solar powered generator. And he has a 90-minute video in there so you can watch it all and watch how he made it. But the reason why we did that was because we started out, with a regular cooler, we would use ice and all that stuff. And it's really cool to see the progression because we did it with a regular cooler with ice, and we've evolved to where we are now because you're like, oh, I need to change this, or I want to do this, or I wish we had this, or whatever, and you just change over time and evolve. So it's cool for people to see different ways of doing it, to be able to make it work. But what happened was we went originally on one of the very first trips with John Kohler, our friend here in Las Vegas. And we went to LA with him, and he had an electric cooler that he brought with him. And we're like, what? We need one of these. Because it just plugs into the cigarette lighter of your vehicle.
Oh,
So you can have a cooler in your back
yeah.
seat and it's all good, right? So he would bring all his like fresh juices and all his food and everything in the cooler. And here we are like, oh, we need to get some ice to fill our cooler, right? So we invested in our first electric cooler and we went camping one time and Nate had purchased like a solar kind of like a mini little generator. It's mostly like you can plug stuff into it and you can charge your phones and run a laptop or whatever. But he was trying to use the solar panels to charge the little generator and use the generator to charge the battery of the cooler because we weren't driving around a lot to plug it in we didn't want to drive around just to charge it. And so the sun was moving and the panels weren't working right and everything. And it was that trip where it was like touch and go. Like we ended up having to get ice because it was just like, we just didn't have enough to keep it going because we weren't driving around. We were just staying at camp and hiking and stuff. So after that trip, Nate was like, I need to build something for the truck so that we always have power of some kind, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he tapped into the RV world and the overlanding world. So some people would have, different contraptions to power, and then other people would use solar power. And he kind of wanted to make a mix of both because he didn't see anything like that online. There wasn't anything that you could charge with the truck, but you could also charge with solar.
Mm-hmm.
So he kind of combined a lot of things that he learned from a ton of different YouTubers, and he made his own plan. Like he had a piece of paper and he would draw everything out and he spent weeks like kind of like thinking about it and planning it and getting pieces and parts, and he was returning stuff because it was not quite the right piece and all this stuff. And yeah, he ended up building this solar power generator that there's lights on it, like you can turn on certain plugs that charge your phone. There's enough plugins to plug in. We can have 2 coolers plugged into it. And he wants to put a third one in because if we go with John and we have like an extra cooler, because sometimes we find we run out of space in our cooler. So we actually bought a second little cooler so that we can take our smoothies to the gym. I know it's overkill, but we're like, let's take our smoothies to the gym. But we didn't want to bring our big cooler because we sometimes use that as a second fridge here in the house. So we have that constantly plugged in and it runs as the second fridge. So sometimes we want to take our cold smoothies to the gym or to a park or what have you. So we bought a little cooler. So both of those plug in. But now if we go to LA with John, we want to have another plug for his cooler as well. So he's going to put another plug in there to the battery. But so all said and done, the solar power generator is attached to the alternator. So when we're driving, it charges the battery because it's dual battery system. So when we're driving, it charges. And then when we stop, the solar panels on top of our truck charge it further. And we've gone camping quite a few times with it. And it's usually at, anywhere between 80 and 100% battery.
Wow.
And we've used our blender. We've blended smoothies and dressings at camp. We have a portable ice maker that we can plug in and we can make ice.
Makes ice?
Yeah, it makes ice. We're like, we can make ice with the heat of the sun. How cool is that?
Oh my God.
Yeah, and so we bring our little ice maker with us. It takes a little while to make ice, but when you're sitting at camp for hours, you're not really doing much. You can just let it run and make ice. So you can go hiking with ice in your backpack or make a smoothie with ice in it. So now we can make our own ice off grid, and we're going to really put it to the test this summer because we have some super off grid stuff that we want to do. Like we're talking like away from anything, because normally we would stay at campgrounds because we would need access to the general store that's usually around the campground, or usually you can drive a little bit and get ice or what have you. But we want to go like off grid, like out in the boonies where there's nobody. But the only way we can do that is with the solar power generator. And now, we can run our coolers, we can run our blender. We did try running the dehydrator but it takes a lot more power. We would need more solar panels on the top. So we just keep doing, like you read in the
Yeah.
book, we do things like the prep, like for taco grounds and the burger patties and the wraps and stuff. We do that before we even leave. And then we just keep it cool in our coolers and it's good to go. But yeah, he's amazing for making that. Like it's wonderful. And it's really well, like meticulously put together.
No, I was looking at like meticulous, the circles and the way he draws everything and drills exactly where it's supposed to be. He's incredible. My God, it's like an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
So wow. So tell me about, I read the books, so I kind of know, but let's tell everybody else whatever you feel like you want to tell without giving it all away, because we want people to get the bundle, of course. But like, how do you prep? Let's say you're taking a trip for the weekend. Most people just take a weekend trip. How are you going about planning and prepping, bringing all your food? Because I think people are overwhelmed by that. Like, how do I bring all the food for the weekend?
Yeah, exactly. How did you find the explanation in the book?
Really, really good.
Nice. Good.
Like, I'm not a camper at all, but I'm like, I should camp because this sounds really good. Like I'm excited about it. I'm not a camper at all, but just to do it because you make it sound so appealing. Yeah, it was very well done.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So what I did, and I actually wrote that whole chapter on the airplane on my phone while I was flying to go see Nate. I was like, I'm just going to write out like everything that we do for a weekend trip. And a lot of people feel like it's a lot of extra work. And obviously, when you are making healthy food for yourself, there is a time investment involved. And it's not just like, a huge amount of time. There is obviously extra time, just like there would be if you were preparing for regular food going camping, right? You still have to keep stuff cold. You still have to prep stuff in advance. You still have to know what you're going to take. So it's similar to planning a regular camping trip, but you're just doing it a little differently because it's raw. So first is it 100% depends on where you go, how long you go, and what you want to take on your trip. So you have to sit down with whoever you're going camping with and talk about what you plan to eat on each day, because you can always change your plan. You don't have to follow it to a T. Like, for example, if we go to Sedona, and we have done this before, we always end up with like more food than we need, because we went to Sedona and there's Chocolate and they have like raw vegan stuff. So we went with some friends and we had all the food we needed for every meal for the day, but they wanted to go to Chocolate twice during that trip. So we ended up like not eating the lunch that we brought, but we ate lunch at the raw vegan restaurant in Sedona twice. So that said, it's better to be prepared and have food and then come home with it. And then you can use that food, if it's still good, you can totally use it as like leftovers or whatever. But it's better to be prepared than to assume, right? We don't want to wing it. We want to make sure that we have everything. So we plan breakfasts, lunches, and dinners. And usually when we go for a weekend trip, it's wraps for lunch, because that's the easiest thing to eat in the vehicle, pull off on the side of the road, eat some wraps. They're easy, they're convenient, they're delicious, and they are portable. So you can take them hiking, and they're just amazing stuff. So wraps are always one of the top #1 things that we like to take camping, but we also like to take the tacos and the burgers. We also take a fair amount of salads as well. So we kind of alternate between wraps and salads. Like if we're staying at camp all day or whatever, just a chill day, we usually make a salad for lunch instead of having a wrap. The wraps are usually meant for hiking and the actual road trip itself, just so they're easy to eat. But at camp, you're just chilling. You're not really doing much. You're like, I'm going to chop a salad because, what else are you going to do, right?
Right.
So, but the tacos and the burgers are also awesome things that we really like to take with us camping. So in order to make the wraps and make the taco grounds and the things we need and make the burgers and everything at camp, we need to do some prep beforehand. So #1 is planning out exactly what you're going to have for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for each day that you're gone, including your road trip. So if you have to drive 6 hours to get to your campsite, What are you going to eat before you leave? What are you going to eat on the drive? What are you going to eat when you get to camp? So always making sure that you know exactly what you're going to have for every meal that you're going to need while you're gone.
Wow.
And then from there, and I know people feel like it might be overwhelming, but it really doesn't take a lot. You just write down breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? And any snacks you want, usually just fruit. But then you backtrack. What do you need to make the days before in order to have everything you need before you leave for the trip? So if we're leaving on a Friday, for example, we're leaving Friday morning for a 6-hour drive to get to our camp spot. We're like, okay, we're going to have wraps for lunch on Friday. We might have a salad when we get there for dinner. Maybe the next day we have, obviously fruit is like the breakfast, and the fruit that we take camping, I mentioned a lot of different options in the book, but top ones are like melons, apples, mangoes, citrus, because all of those don't need to be in the cooler. We just leave them in our back seat. And even though it's hot, they are pretty durable. Like they don't really go bad, especially melons. Melons are probably the top #1 food that we like to take and have for breakfast and stuff. They're not only hydrating, especially camp a lot in the desert and we do a lot of activity. So it's nice to have that extra hydration, but they are so sturdy.
Yeah.
Melons and apples are like gold camping fruits. So we always just make sure that we have enough melons and apples and mangoes and whatever else that we want to take with us for each breakfast for each day.
Okay.
So then for lunch, if we're having the wraps for 3 lunches, then we need to make 6 wrappers because there's 2 of us, right? Which is 3 recipes. So it's like, okay, well, if we're making 3 different recipes to make 6 wraps, when do we need to start doing that? So I like to start on like a Wednesday night, and we'll make wraps Wednesday night and Thursday night and maybe Friday night, depending on how long our trip is. So it's like you backtrack through and be like, what do I need to make on Thursday night so that it's ready for Friday? What do I need to make on Wednesday night so that's ready for Friday? What do I need to make in the days before? And then all you do is plan it out like a list, and then you just do it. Like Wednesday at 5 o'clock, I'm making wraps. It only takes 15 minutes, and then they'll be ready. Thursday night, all I do is make the burgers, make the taco grounds, and make more wraps Thursday night or whatever. Maybe you start on Tuesday if you need an extra wrap, or maybe you're making 2 batches on Wednesday, right? For extra wraps. So you really have to just kind of plan that time, right? So once that's done, and I also blend all the dressings the day before. So if we're making like the buffalo sauce, which is a really popular one that we like to take, divine lime, and all of these recipes are in the Tales from the Tailgate ebook that's in the bundle, link in bio to go get that. But all of the recipes are recipes that we usually make. So yeah, and we've taken them and we've eaten them, and each recipe kind of has a little story to it, right? Like, you know, where we ate it or what we did or what have you. But we do all the dressings the day before as well. And then they're ready to go. Now, because we have the solar powered generator, sometimes we will make a dressing on the run. Like if we plan it out, we'll be like, well, you know, Saturday we're going to hang out at camp, so I'll just bring the ingredients to make this recipe. And then I just make sure that we have the ingredients. Like we have these little jars, and there's tons of links in the book, like loads of links. So if anyone's asking about what we take for our backpacking, hiking, our camping gear, like the tools we use, there's thousands of links in there. So we have these like little bottles that have like a good screw top lid, and we'll take like apple cider vinegar or you know, any kind of liquid, like maybe a little maple syrup if we want to add that to something or what have you, coconut aminos. So you can collect like these little pots or jars. Like you could have a little pot with miso paste in it if you want. And then we have our little bin that we have all our kitchen tools that lives in the truck. So it's not like we're like, oh, did you bring the bowls from what, you know, upstairs? You're like, oh, I forgot them, right? And then you don't have bowls. So we have all of the things that we need in the truck, and they live in the truck, and they never leave the truck. So everything gets washed at camp. We have like a Dr. Bronner's soap that we have if we need to wash anything at camp or what have you. But they live in the truck. They're not allowed to leave, because if they leave, they don't usually go back. So yeah, so that's kind of how we plan. The taco grounds, the burger patties, the sauces, and the wraps. Those are usually what we make before we leave. And then the morning of our trip, we blend up smoothies so that we have either one or two smoothies each, depending on how long the drive is. But we'll drink those in the truck, and then we stop for lunch. And then when we get to camp, we usually make a salad that night, or we make tacos. I mean, it really depends on how we plan it. But yeah, that's kind of how the scope of it goes.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're so organized, and it shows in the book how, you plan everything out. I mean, not too many people are as organized as you, but we can learn from you, and that's why you wrote the book, so we can
Exactly.
learn how to be organized, how to have a successful trip. So, like, if you care to tell us, where are you going in the summer that's going to be off grid?
So we have found kind of like special secret
Oh,
locations. There's one, um, it's by Bryce Canyon, where we go often. We really like Bryce Canyon, and they have internet at their campsite, so it's kind of nice when we go to the campsite.
yeah.
But we want to camp off grid, so like there is a couple little roads around the area that you can like drive on, and you
Mm,
need four-wheel drive to get on some of them because they're pretty
okay.
intense. But if you can get out there and
Yeah.
drive and drive and drive, like you can camp on public lands and you can
Mm,
go wherever you want. And most areas, as long as you're not driving off the road, obviously, like stick to roads that exist. Don't
right.
make your own because you don't want to like damage the area or what have you. But
Mm,
if you can find a road, drive on it. And if it's on public lands,
mm-hmm.
BLM lands, then you can totally camp there. Usually for like up to 14 nights is usually what they say.
Okay.
But we have, even in the book, like people often ask, like, well, what do you do for a bathroom? And what do you do for, whatever? But we have like, and actually Nate got this for me for Christmas. It was a toilet seat
Mhm.
that sits on its own like little like things. So, and you can put a bag in it. And I
Right.
have links to all of this. I have the link to the toilet seat, the link to the wag
Yeah.
bags or whatever. And we have like this, it's a shower stall that you just pop up. It's like a pop-up one. And we just put the toilet in there and you can just, look at nature while you're doing your thing.
Right.
So yeah, but that's what we do. We like to go off on like random roads and just
Okay.
drive and see where we can go. So there's that spot, and then there's a couple spots, kind of around the Grand Canyon area.
Oh.
There's a lot of spots just outside Vegas. Like, as soon as you get into BLM land,
Mm-hmm.
you're pretty good to go. Like, you can camp pretty much anywhere, right? As long as
Oh,
you respect, leave no trace. And I do talk
yeah.
about that too in
Yes.
the book too, leave no trace, and what to do with your poo.
Yeah. Interesting. I always wondered, what do they do about that? I was, I never asked you, but I was always curious because I know you do these things. I was like, where do they go to the bathroom? I have no idea. But thank you for addressing that in the book because you answered my question.
Yeah, we really tried to get as much as we possibly could into this
Yeah.
book. Like, we even have a chapter on how to bring your microgreens and your sprouts
Oh,
camping with you.
yeah.
Um, so, yeah, we tried to get as much as we could in there. Safety
Yeah.
tips, there's packing lists, it's so loaded. There's 277 pages in
I
there.
know it's really, it encompasses everything you need to know. Can you tell us, have you ever experienced an emergency or something going wrong and you had to deal with it? Like, what can you talk about that?
Yeah. We have, and we talk about this in the ebook as well. There was a trip that we refer to as the trip we almost died on. It was a hiking adventure. We were hiking overnight, and living in Las Vegas, you really learn that you need to bring extra water. Like, you really need to drink water when you live in the desert. I know there's some people out there on raw diets who are like, you don't need to drink water because you eat your water. And obviously, eating our water is a good, but when you live in a dry climate, when it's really hot, you need to drink water. And we should be drinking water extra anyways, right? Even if I'm eating lots of hydrating foods, I still feel better when I drink water. So we go on this hiking trip, and we took melons with us in our backpacks. And we have like the big hiking backpacks, right? Like, we have our tent and all the sleeping bags and everything's like lightweight, and there's links in the book too for all
Yeah.
of that.
Mm-hmm.
So we pack up our bags. We took melons for breakfast. We also took one of our sprouted oatmeal cold soaks that is in there too. We also took a different cold soak too. And we took what we needed to make burgers because we wanted to have burgers overnight. And we just went for one night. So we map out the trail that we wanted to take and approximately where we wanted to sleep for the night. So we go out there, it's BLM land, there's like hardly anybody around. Actually, I think we might have seen like one person, maybe two people on the main part of the trail, because like when you go in and you're taking a trail that like hardly anyone uses, you really don't see anybody. So it it can be dangerous. You want to make sure that you know where you're going and all this kind of stuff. So we go, and on the way back, the trail, because we didn't do an in and out, it was a loop. So when we walked first, we found a nice place. It was maybe like 12 miles in, I think, 12 or 13 miles in. We find a nice little space, we set up, we eat our burgers, and everything's good. And then the next day, we were going to walk back to the truck, and the map, the GPS said that it would be like 11 miles or something like that. So we're walking on it, and the map is like taking us like away from the trail, but there was no other trail, right, to take. And it was kind of like alongside the trail, and we were like moving with it, but it was adding like way more miles onto it than the actual GPS was telling us. So, and plus like this trail was like this, like you're going up, 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 and then you're going like really down. So it's like really, really, really a lot of hills, and that was getting us a little bit like dehydrated. And I ran out of water probably around like we had maybe like 5 or 6 miles left, and I ran out of water, and I was like starting to get a little like anxious. I'm like, it's okay, we'll be okay. It wasn't super, super hot, but it's hot in Vegas, so it wasn't like a summer hot day, but it was maybe like 90, 95. And just going up the hills and being tired from all the walking and hiking and everything, it was pretty scary. So I ran out of water, and so Nate started to kind of conserve his, like he wasn't drinking as much either. And we got to a couple points where I felt like really faint and really tired and really exhausted because I just wasn't getting enough hydration.
Right.
And there came a point like I was actually pretty scared, right? Like I like took off my backpack and I was laying on the ground, and I'm like, I don't know if I can go on. And we're kind of like freaking out, like what's going to happen or whatever. And then Nate was like, well, I could try and like get back to the truck and get help, but then you'd be here all alone in the middle of nowhere. It's going to be dark soon. And we were kind of scared. I was like, it's okay. Like, I'm going to try and get going. So we kept going, and I'd have like a couple sips of his water too, but he really didn't have a lot left too. So we eventually get there. And the whole time that I was walking, I was like, there's water in the truck, there's water in the truck, there's water in the truck, there's water in the truck. And I was constantly like reminding myself that there was water in the truck, to keep going and, go slow, not to push myself too much. And, eventually we got to the truck, and there was plenty of water there. And, I was like feeling really nauseated, really sick from that. So what we learned from that was that even when you feel like you are prepared, to be more prepared. And we learned that we need to take extra water, and I talk about that in the ebook as well, how important it is to take extra water, because a couple times on the trail we found people who had no water, and we gave them water because they were feeling lightheaded and sick. And again, it's something that you learn when you're living in the desert. And I'm from Canada. We don't have like the heat that we have here. So moving here, it was really eye-opening to learn about how important it is to take water. And they have signs everywhere, and they're like, make sure you have lots of water. And then you think, you're like, I have lots of water, but you gotta double it, because there's no water. I mean, there is water. There's, in certain areas, depending on where you go, you can find water, but it's super rare and it's hard to find, and you have to walk to it to get the water. So it's very, very, very important to take extra water with you, not just for yourself, but have extra in case you find someone on the trail who needs extra water. So important. So that was like the one main like scary thing that happened to us. And yeah, It happens. Like I said, it happens to the best of us. There's people who do, adventuring and stuff for their whole lifetime, and they know these things, and sometimes stuff happens, and so
Yeah, no, happen, and you're the most prepared person I know, and it happened to you, so it could
yeah.
happen to anybody.
Mhm.
So when you say prepared with the water, like how much water are you talking about for a long hike? Like how many ounces or liters are you talking about?
Yeah, so I'm not sure right now off the
Oh,
top of my head. Nate would know
oh,
instantly.
okay.
But I think it's like 1 liter for every 2 miles or something like that. But like for like a good 13-mile hike, I like to take at least 4 liters.
Okay.
So I have a big like 2.5. It's 2 liters, but it fills to 2.5 liters
Mm-hmm.
of water in my hydraulics that I have in the backpack.
Okay.
And then we also have pockets on the sides, and we
Mm-hmm.
put 2 liters of water, 1 liter on each side. So we
Okay.
have all that extra water. And it is more heavy because obviously you're carrying all this water, but as you drink it, it gets lighter and lighter. So that's kind of a benefit. But we also take with us our Catadine filter. So it's like this little it's just like a bag basically with a little filter in it.
Mm-hmm.
And if we find water, I know up in Mount Charleston here, there's like some springs and stuff. And if you get the app called Gaia,
Mm-hmm.
they actually have on there like the different water sources. So it's meant for through hikers. So when you're doing like a through hike,
Mm-hmm.
you can know where to maybe get your water or how many more miles you have until you get to water or what have you, if there's a spring or a little river or something like that. So yeah, it does add extra weight to your hiking, but that's also a good thing. And that's something that people feel like, oh, I'm going to carry all this weight. But number one, if you get and invest in a really good backpack, a lot of them have a lot of support. And the one that I have, a lot of the weight is put around the waist or like the hips area. So when I can load that thing up, and it doesn't necessarily feel as heavy as it would if I just had it on my shoulders, most of the weight on my shoulders. Most of the weight is distributed properly. And that's why you really want to, invest in a really good, high quality backpacking pack.
Mm-hmm.
But also, on a health note, it's actually beneficial to carry weight on your back, especially for us, as we move into
Yes.
menopause, right?
Yes.
Women, we need to carry that extra
Yes.
weight, that it increases our bone density. So a
Right.
lot of people think like, like vegans tend to have lower bone density or whatever, but vegans tend to be, lighter weight. So when you are lighter
Mm-hmm.
weight, you naturally, no matter what diet you're on,
Mm-hmm.
if you are, a lighter weight, an appropriate weight,
Mm-hmm.
you tend to have lower bone density because you don't have all that weight
Right.
carrying, and your bones don't need to be as strong
Right.
to carry that weight. So, they have like people who are overweight who don't eat a vegan diet
Mm-hmm.
can have better bone density because their body is carrying the extra weight.
Yes.
So having extra weight, doing weight training and carrying the weight is actually beneficial to our bodies when
Yes.
it comes to bone density. So I personally don't mind if there's extra weight. It's like I'm training, like I'm getting
Yeah.
that extra weight in.
That's
My bones are like, oh, I better make myself stronger because
right.
carrying this weight. So
That's
that's something that we don't worry too much about. And the more often you
mhm.
do it, the better it is. And so what I like to do on my morning walks, I like to put a lot of weight in my regular backpack with my water, and I try to drink all my water during my walk in the morning. But I
Yeah.
also put extra weight in there, like you throw a melon in there or something like that, just to give that extra weight so that I can continue to keep my bone density at a decent level.
Wow.
So,
That's amazing that you actually do that deliberately, that you put them
mhm.
there.
and doing it deliberately helps for your future hikes. Like if you only
Right.
hike once a month,
Right.
it's going to be intense.
Yeah.
But if you do it every day,
Yeah.
when you go for your hike, you're like, oh, this isn't, this is my average.
Right. You're used to it. You're training for your next hike. Oh,
Exactly,
I love
exactly.
it. That's great. Wow. So thank you so much, Lissa, for joining me and giving all these great tips to all these people. And is there any final word that you'd like to impart before we sign off?
Oh my goodness. I would say enjoy it. Because a lot of people, like I said earlier, they feel overwhelmed with all the stuff they need to do and all the things they need to get. But just start with what you have and start experimenting. Go for one night camping, like do what you can with what you have.
Mhm.
And as you do more, you get better at it, right? We're only where we are because we keep doing it, right? We keep going camping and we keep going hiking and we keep going on adventures. And we've learned little tips and tricks along the way. Like our kitchen bin is 6 years in the making, right? Like, little things were like, oh, I wish we had a vegetable peeler. Okay, that's going to go in there. And I wish I had this spice. Okay, well, we have to keep that in the bin, right? So as you move through, every time you try, you get
Mhm.
better at it. You're like, oh, we forgot this and we need to do that, blah blah blah. And then you refine your system basically.
Right.
So I just recommend people just go out and enjoy, plan one night or one hike, even be like,
Mhm.
what are we going to take on our hike to eat on the top of this mountain, right? And that's something that Nate and I really like to do. We're like, let's see what kind of extravagant raw food we can eat on the top of that mountain, right? So we're like, try to pack our bags and stuff. But zeroing down to like just one meal or one adventure or one night or whatever can really help, to not feel so overwhelmed. Because if you're going for like a 5 night camping trip, that's going to be, you're going to need your electric coolers and, all the stuff and planning and everything. So just start with one night and have fun with it. Have fun with it. Make sure you plan and be safe out there. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Lissa. So everybody get the bundle. It's in both our bios, and you get Lissa's ebook. You get well, you could tell them what they get. You know more than I do what's in there.
Yeah. So the Ultimate Raw Vegan Bundle, it only happens once a year. It's going on right now until May 12th. So you got to get it now if you want to get it. If you missed it last year, it's totally different. Everything in this bundle is absolutely brand new, including your Fruithies ebook, which is awesome. So that's in there too. There's 33 ebooks contributed to this bundle. Nate and I contributed our Tales from the Tailgate travel book that we've been talking about. And I wrote Make It Raw 3 with Chef AJ. Every year we make a new volume for that with tons of really fun new recipes in it. But there's a raw pizza in there. There's a low fat desserts ebook in there as well. So please go check it out if you haven't yet. Link is in either of our bios. Go grab it before it's gone, because next year it'll be completely different. We'll have all new stuff for it.
Yes. So thank you. Wow. Thank you so much for joining me, Lissa. It was, as always, such fun talking to you. I always learn so much from you. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and we will see you soon.
Thank you, Debbie.
Welcome.